Mette from Amoc Jewellery in Greystones, County Wicklow. I design and create unique jewellery pieces. I realised I started when I was about 12 years old. I did a week's work experience with a jewellery maker that just made jewellery from beads. At the time I didn't know that that was going to be the route I'd take, but I've always been very, very creative, and I finished school and then I went off travelling to Australia, and then I got an apprenticeship as a jeweller. So that was my start in Australia. And then I met my husband, who is Irish, and that made me move to Ireland, where I then continued training as a jeweller. So my formal training then became with the Craft Council of Ireland, which it was called at the time. My passion has always been with the traditional craft, and I've tried to keep that as much as possible. I know in the world we live in now there's so many easy ways of doing things, but I really love doing it from the very bottom and forging, shaping, you know, hammering things into the right shape and letting the metal kind of do its own thing. It is difficult because the metal is hard. We work with hard metal, and even though you can anneal it to soften it so it's a little bit more malleable, it still is metal, so it does require quite a lot of strength to control it. I tend to, mostly I'll do a sketch first. I have an idea of where I want this piece to head and then get started on it, and sometimes it brings me in a different direction. Other times I know exactly that I want it to be like this, so I keep fighting to get it in that particular place. My inspiration is always from nature. It's just I am obsessed with walking in the woods and looking at the ocean, the trees. I just think that so much around me that I get inspired by. Everything I draw is nature related, so it automatically then becomes part of my jewellery design. I think it is absolutely incredible that nature creates these sparkly gems for us to enjoy, and I tend to go very much gravitate towards the greens and the blues. And sometimes I just see a gemstone that I just think the colour could be just very, very unusual, or the cut could be unusual, and then I'll pick them and I'll bring them back, and then they could be sitting in the cabinet for a few years before I get around to it, but then eventually then I'll feel in a creative mood and take the stone out and say, okay, I want this to be a ring. I think a lot of people don't realise at all how much time is actually invested in hand making anything, not just jewellery, but it's the same with, you know, try and sit down and knit a sweater and all of a sudden you will appreciate why people, you know, have to charge a certain amount of money for the things that they make by hand. And that's why I also wanted to have a shop with the open workshop, so you get a feel for what actually goes on behind the scenes. You see, we get dirty fingers, we have really big tools, really big hammers, really big files, and I think a lot of people think jewellery, everything is really fine and clean, and it's the complete opposite. It's really rough and dirty, you know, so it's, yeah. I've had a good few people through here that I have taught. I think it's really important to share the knowledge, also because so many crafts die out with the mass production of things, so I think it's really, really important to try and bring this on to the next generation. I think when something is handmade, the person that has created it puts in a lot of energy and thought, and I think that does carry through in the pieces. As soon as something is mass produced, I'm not interested anymore. There's something really beautiful about creating a piece for my customers. They always come in and there's always a specific reason for getting that piece commissioned, and you're creating a memory for your customer, which I think is also very special to be able to do that.